Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. A website without SEO is like a billboard in the woods. No one sees it. Tyler Stratton. Our guest today, the one and only Jesse Woods,
Thank you
friend
for
of the
having me.
culture. Thank you. Pleasure is all yours. Very close friend of the Culture Matters podcast. One of the hardest working people that I've met in the last handful of years. We're actually in his domicile, his dungeon, his architect's desk, where he builds creations that provide so much value for One Team Media and everyone that he touches. We'll talk about shoes, design, inspiration, innovation, and so much more. I've had the pleasure of knowing Jesse for a couple of years now and
hmm
building a friendship and learning from him with how he shows up every day. And I'm excited to learn more of your story and share you with our audience, and so you can understand what it takes to build what you're building. It's pretty amazing. So thanks for coming on the Culture
Of
Matters
course.
podcast and doing this in the den.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in the middle of figured it was fitting for this podcast and for yourself as well too. I'm in the middle of a lot of different things right now. I got a lot of due dates coming up in the next literally 48 hours. So yeah, I'm in the process of all of that and trying to juggle multiple things. Also, along with One Team Media, that's like a whole other entity. So it's just a constant flow of what's today's project, what can I chip away at, and what's the next thing I can get into.
What are we looking? So for those that are listening, please go to YouTube, type in my name, the Culture Matters podcast, Jesse Woods as well, to see the physical environment of this creature of habit, creature of innovation and design and inspiration. So but let's paint a visual as for those that are just listening on the Culture Matters podcast. Where did your inspiration come from as it relates to footwear,
hmm
and what are we in? What's around us, and how does that relate to your art, your creativity?
Yeah, so I'll start off with I guess the journey. It really started as just when being in high school, you couldn't really afford like the shoes or whatever. At that time, that's important, right? You want to look good and feel good. And so yeah, as a kid, I wasn't really able to. We'd get like one or two pairs, and I would just maintain them over the years. Around that time, it's like that's what was. I was very into sports, so like being interested in like getting a pair of Jordans or LeBrons or something at that time was exciting as a kid. And you can't really get those, so we'd kind of thrift them around. I'd do hand me downs or kind of just collect what I could. We always made the best of what we could get, right? So that was something that kind of stuck with me. So back in like high school-ish, I would kind of buy shoes off of kids and clean them up, resell them. I got into a lot of actually where this started from was 5 pairs of shoes that got donated from a stealer. I don't know who it was, but essentially my mother went into a Goodwill. There was 5 pairs of shoes from a stealer that was donated. She got those for me. They were like $25 a pair, something like that. And that's kind of what started this because then I ended up selling those on eBay, started my pot there, and then I just was buying and reselling with the money I made from there. And it's kind of evolved and to what it is today. And as you go through that journey, I was cleaning and restoring. So when you're doing that, you have to like buy something dirty, clean it up. You would apply paint on some of the shoe to, fix any flaws that happened on it. And I went from that to then painting onto the shoes like images or, changing the colors and kind of making my own designs on the shoes. And then one day I picked up a special sewing tool and I sewed a patch on one of my shoes, and I was like, oh, I could sew on a shoe. So when I started doing that, I then did my first pair where I cut up the shoe and then sewed it back together. And when I had done that, it kind of got interest immediately from a guy that played for the Pirates at the time. He had reached out to me and was interested in my work and basically asked me if I could do X, Y, and Z because I had a different style at that time that I was working with. And he wanted more of like a professional, like mine was a little bit more artistic and grungy. And I always called it Frankenstein stitching, where I would essentially, I'm sewing these pieces together like as if, it's a Frankenstein. And he was like, Can we make it look like it came from the factory and use higher end materials? I got guys that would be interested in buying that, and I made him like 5 or 6 prototypes, and then my first paying client was the rapper Rick Ross. So when
Whoa.
that happened, I was like, I gotta lean into this, and he was the first. He was like a bucket list guy that was pretty much my first client, and from there I just was like, I need to do this. And then shortly after, it was Kevin Hart, and from there on out, I was like, all right, I gotta really hone in on this and kind of pull from. I've always been artistic, creative. I always drew and paint. I loved building things. Like that was when I was younger. We would build our additions, ponds, pools, all at the house. We everything we had, we built and made from what we could get and obtain, and we always kept things nice. And that was, so we always made the most out of what we could get. So I just applied those to, shoes and fashion, and because I saw the market for it, saw people paying $1,000 for a shoe. I'm like, okay, well, what's a better product than to sell something that everybody wants? There's a relatively low cost. If I can provide a high level of craftsmanship, I could get paid a substantial amount of money for, some of these projects. I don't think I ever paid more than $200 on a pair of shoes, and that was when I started getting into it. And $200 is still a lot to me to this day, but like, yeah, I never pay more than 200, and I've sold stuff up to upwards of 2,000, $2,500 for just one pair of shoes. So, kind of saw that and wanted to
Wow.
attack it.
What does a shoe mean? So on the male side, what does a shoe mean to a man?
Yeah, I think obviously there's the practicality, and like you have to understand and respect what, like, shoes were never meant to be a luxury, right? Like when they first were being implemented in the world, right? It was a necessity. Like you needed to protect your feet. You needed to, have something that you could, I'm sure at the time is travel with, something sustainable. Keep away from injuries. So like you have to also understand that aspect of things. And I do laugh at myself sometimes knowing that at one point, like people were hunting and gathering, and now we're at an era where I'm putting luxury into a product that then sells for a substantial amount of money for, it's just the society that we're in to this day. We've evolved to that. But to a man, I think, I think for certain people, it's just a practical thing. So I understand not every single person walking in this world is my target audience. I think I can craft something to pretty much everybody with given the right understanding. Like if you're looking for practicality, like I could advance something to where it's more stable. And some of the machines that I used were just made for patching holes on your boots. And that's the machine I currently use. It was a hole patcher, and it also attached the sole to your shoe. So there is a practicality sense in it. But at this point, we live in a status-based environment. There's a lot of people, why do you wear a Rolex, right? It's a conversation starter. It is a wearable piece of art. And I really like that concept of having wearable art. I think it defines your character. I think there's a lot of angles you could get from somebody. Again, when people buy Rolexes, it's not necessarily because they think it looks cool. It for some it is, but for others, that starts a conversation that might be a
Mm.
lifelong business with the person that you interacted with. But I think it's a way to express yourself. And I I I I think more or less for myself, it's just creating. Um, I didn't think I was going to get into shoes and fashion when I was younger. I wanted to create. It didn't matter what it was. My first love was architecture, and you know, I wanted to create, and I just found this to be something I could get into with low cost. I could do it immediately. I didn't have to wait. I could jump right into it. And why I'm still doing it today is just because of the traction it got. So I do battle between like, I don't necessarily provide a necessity, right? But I over the years have been able to apply practical meaning to it to where you could advertise your business on your feet. You could start a conversation. You could provide something to a high level client that could afford and buy anything. So I could provide them a service that they can't get elsewhere. So it's a value of scarcity as well too.
Have you heard the adage about the belt and the shoes matter? The watch, the belt, the shoes.
No, I don't know
Like
if
a
I've heard that.
classical.
I
in the
understand.
professional sense. Like they look at the shoes,
Yeah,
the watch, the belt.
right. Yeah. I mean, are you going to meet, you've worked at Jordan Peterson, right? Would you show up with some beat up shoes and a no watch, or not wearing a belt? Like there are those things that they're like the bow on the present, right? It's like, it's something that ties everything together. And I don't think it's the end all be all. I mean, I don't think, like, I'm not out here curing cancer, right? But like, if I'm able to provide something that somebody's excited and passionate about, it's just like anything else. Like, why do you get the nice car compared to a practical car? Why do you get the Rolex
Mm.
compared to a calculator watch, right? So I think it's providing a high level of service for the people that want to obtain those things and work for those things as well too.
You said we always made the best of what we could. What core values do you think you learned early on?
Yeah, I think I think it made me very practical, and I think it made me very realistic of like what's important, to be honest. As somebody that does work with fashion and luxury and creating these things, I don't find myself really caring about it that much for myself. There are things that I like, of course. There are certain brands that you'll see that you know stroke you in a way where you're like, I like this. The aesthetic, because there's also a culture behind all these brands too, and you're not buying the brand logo, you're buying the lifestyle
Mm.
that it embodies, and so it gives you a way to identify with those things. So for myself, I don't necessarily fall victim to chasing brands and the hype of things. It's more, I would rather be the creator of those things. So when you look at a lot of artists, or creatives, they have a look and a way that you would think, oh, this person creates. He's created a multi-million-dollar business off of his fashion, but he doesn't necessarily like feel the need to like have that stuff, because you could either be a trendsetter or a trend follower, and I want to lean more towards the trend setting. And I do believe that with the ability of removing hype and removing the yearning for wanting to be accepted or all of those things, I think with me not having that high level of a concern of it, it gives me the ability to freely create and
Mm.
hopefully provide something that people are proud of, and they identify with that, and I'm hoping that in the future that whether it is shoes or whatever it is, like I've always been an open book to what I want to create, but at the end of the day, it boils down to like I want to inspire and show people that with little to nothing, you can also start, your journey through these things. We're here talking today because of a side hustle of a silly little arts and crafts shoe project that I started years ago. I'm not
Mm.
here with you today because of my college background or my previous work experience. Those were a dime a dozen, but this was something that was unique and different. And I saw that and I wanted to stand out and be unique and different, not in a fashion sense, but in an innovative sense.
What are some of the elements that you've noticed start or are a part of what leads to a trend?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is, unfortunately, and I guess fortunately, it's who backs that, and also again the lifestyle that it portrays. Like the notorious line for Louis Vuitton is, they have two levels of Louis Vuitton. The ones that are more flashy are for the people that are broke that want to look rich, and for the more subtle stuff is for the people that are rich and don't care. You're just at that
Uh,
point buying a high quality product, because you could see the quality difference in some of these pieces. You have the obvious Louis Vuitton that has the print all over it, and not to say that that's not nice and it doesn't have its place and things, but when Louis Vuitton is making that, yes, there will be people that have high status that obtain those, but it's mainly for the person that wants to say, "Hey, look at this logo all over me.
yes.
I portray and I identify as somebody that's at this status." But meanwhile, when you look at the common, when you look at Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, they're wearing the plain T-shirt, but this T-shirt might be $800, but you can't tell it looks like a plain T-shirt, right?
Wow.
They don't per se like
Uh,
fixate over the logos, and it's more of quality at that point. And then when you look at the Louis Vuitton, the higher products, and this goes across the board for a lot of designer brands, the more subtle stuff is a higher quality leather, higher quality craftsmanship, because those people don't necessarily feel the need to put on blast that, hey, this is Louis Vuitton.
What does it take to be a craftsman?
I think it takes vision. It takes vision. It takes the need and the burning desire to want to create and change things. So everything in my life, I have this curse and blessing of seeing things, but thinking about how they could be improved. A lot of my inspiration doesn't come directly from other fashion and clothes. It really does come from just the art of essentially like the world. It could be come from nature. It comes from architecture. It comes from impractical things that I will apply to garner an aesthetic. I might see something that has nothing to do with fashion, but you could interpret that into that. But I'd say it's the burning desire, at least for myself, it's the burning desire to create and inspire. Um, and at the end of the day, I also, what kind of is my saving grace in, being a creative and not necessarily, being a rocket scientist or a doctor that's curing and saving lives. But what's one of the oldest forms of communication and even technology that dates all the way back? Why were people drawing on caves?
Mm,
Why were people singing and dancing? It's forms of communication and expression and being able to understand one another. Now, I think we've gotten to a point in the world where it's in abundance and to the point where it's almost at a fault where there's too much of it. It's in excess, but I think the core of it is historical. Um, you know, there's reasons why, like when you look at ancient Egypt or some of the old aesthetics of just the Victorian era is probably my greatest inspiration and my love and passion and what I want to bring back to a modern day society. But when you look at that stuff, like why was that stuff praised so highly? Because if we get into a world where everything becomes automated, right? And if all of the labor and the grunt work of jobs and building a society is managed and taken care of, what's left? And I think at the end of the day, it's still to be able to create. And that's the positive hope for a future is if things, become automated and we don't really have as much grunt work to do, people are going to be sitting around and creating and in creating like this beautiful utopia that I think most people fantasize about, or at least when things started, it was the goal to just create and live in that abundance of just excess of art and creation and expression. And that's what we are as humans. Like we are creators. We were created from a creator. If you think about the creation of this world, it is art. Why do I breathe without thinking? Why do I blink? Why does the sun come out every day? Like that's all a creation and that's all art. you know I just honed into this specific field for the time being, and I think it's the fabric of human nature. It's, you don't see animals, not every animal has that drive and want to do it. So
mm.
I think it's in our souls to do that, to create.
From a What about intention? Where does intention play a role, if at all, in a product in one of your pieces?
Yeah, I'd say for like my intention. So are you asking like what my intention is when I create?
Is that is
Yeah,
that involved in that, or does intention play a role at all?
yeah. I
Or
mean, I think it's
I'm
when
thinking intention, time invested. How does a process unfold?
yeah, I would say like when I'm my intent of being a creative is to be one of the greater creatives that have ever lived, to be able to be known for that unique perspective. And honestly, a lot of it is I don't even look at it as only art. I think one of the greatest assets that I think been blessed with and that I've seen in others that I strive to have more of is creative problem solving is I think one of the greater
Mm.
assets. And I think in college I was told that that was probably the number one thing that any company is looking for. It is to be able
Wow.
to creatively problem solve. And that gets stretched across the board in so many things. I mean, to get to this place that we're in society now, it took creative problem solving to create a business, to create a building, to create roads, to create society. That's creative problem solving. It takes a certain level of thinking. So my intention behind my pieces is to be so, connected with creative problem solving that I'm able to innovate new concepts and ideas that revolutionize maybe mundane or the stuff that we've seen forever. You know, it's I do a lot of custom work, right? And people love it, and it's very exciting for them. But that doesn't actually light the fire in me, because I'm just kind of altering something that's in existence currently, and I'm just adding maybe a little bit of a twist to it. But my real passion and what I want to do with my work is to innovate, whether it's the smallest thing, if it's able to change the generation of, whether it be footwear, fashion, whether it is, when an architect is designing, like, you want to create something that could change the course of the world. You think of how bridges got built and what they started to what they are now. It's all innovation and creativity.
I want your thoughts on this perspective. Attention holds us accountable. It has the force to move us into change.
Yeah, I would
So
say
like
absolutely.
there's attention on us.
Yeah.
There's attention on whether it's a shoe or
Yeah.
another. We're curious of your philosophical uh,
Yeah.
response to that. Attention holds us accountable. It has force
Of course.
to move us into change or move us
Yeah.
higher or something. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that could be the engine of everything. I mean, the if your attention is into creating a better society, again, in a time period where we don't have everything that we have currently. Like, we live in absolute luxury in comparison to, some the past existence. But to put the attention into, like, I'm going to design, I'm going to design roads for the first time. I'm going to design vehicles that could take people from one place to another. Like, to not have clear attention in those things, like, you're you're just going to get lost in it. And now I focus my attention on footwear, again, living in an abundant society. I could have focused my attention towards many other things, but I chose this one just because I saw a market. We're in this new age where these things are status pieces. You see people getting married in shoes. You like, instead of the dress shoes, it's they're getting married in, streetwear. You see brand deals coming up from it, businesses working and collaborating. So, like, when I focus my attention specifically on that, but without the attention, it's like attention and intention kind of like go hand in hand together, because, like, when you're if you're scattered all over the place, you're never going to be able to hone in. Like, your attention is to creating the greatest culture within companies, within yourself, within everybody you interact with. If your attention was in that, but also you wanted to be a NASCAR driver or something, like, how do you really get to focus on that? But the engine behind what you're doing is the attention that you want to give to culture, and that's what fuels you to go, right?
What does one team mean to you?
One team, I think one team means to me, I like that one team is exactly the title that it is, one team, right? I think it gets too far lost in the world and society that we're on different teams. I think we live in a very team minded, like, team oriented society where people want to identify with, I'm this religion, I'm this, I follow these type of politics, I'm this gender, or I'm this race. Like, but at the end of the day, we genuinely are on one team, and that could be the human race, that could just be existence, could incorporate animals and living, you know trees. Like, that's all under the same, it's all under one team as far as, like, this existence on this planet, right? So I think what's great about just the name of one team alone is that we are all on the same mission. And I think it's just to thrive and grow, right? I don't think it's getting the most money or getting the nice car. It's just to grow in general. All of those other things are byproducts of the pursuit of growth. That's why we have everything we do today. So when you look at one team in the pursuit and growth of the services that we provide, it is being able to get people's messages, their stories, their business, what they have to offer out into the world. So with us being able to provide a platform to accelerate those things, I think that it in turn helps the main mission of what we all fall under the umbrella of as one team, as a human society. Like we want to push forward and further. So how do you get that in this day and age? It's being able to like what's the greatest way to make change in this day and age? Is it to post on your Instagram story, I support this cause, or is it to actually go out there and like make the money, do put the money behind certain things? I think money right now at this point talks more than um, doing the parading around. Like I think that that kind of is a way to say I identify with this, but to get real change is to put work towards something. And I think that we provide a platform for people to be able to express those things.
What, why do podcasters start podcasts?
I'd say it's for a very similar thing as well too, to get your message out there, to get your your perspective, and that comes in all types of different forms. It can come from comedy to knowledge, and those are that's kind of the range that I dive into podcasts. I could be listening to a very silly, mundane podcast, and then the next could be something very profound that makes me think. And I think they both serve equal positive purpose in my life, just because one's able to make me critically think and how I could be better, right? And then I think the other one could also allow me to critical think and kind of just reset a little bit. It's like a mental vacation you could take when you're just listening to something that's just entertaining, right? But I think podcasts give the platform to people to speak and identify and feel like they're a part of something. Big reason why I love podcasts for myself is I feel like I'm in the room. I know the person. I'm having that conversation. Then when you get a really good host that can ask the right questions and can really capture the essence of that person that they're interviewing, like you're able to connect with people that you wouldn't have been able to connect with uh, even just years ago, right? And I think podcasting is allowing us to communicate, which is at the core fundamental of human nature is to communicate. It's able to broadcast a level of communication that can give you knowledge, hope, passion, all of the things that fuel us as humans. And there's a reason why that is taken over in comparison to news or TV. Like those things are falling to the side compared to podcasting, where podcasting could give you the information, the hope, the drive, entertainment. It embodies all of that in a raw form because you're just sitting here talking. There's no production crew, there's no script for what we're supposed to say. We're just being ourselves. And somebody could watch this and just listen to it and go, oh, whatever. Or they could analyze how we're communicating. What's our subtle movements? How are we like what are we talking about? Like, and you're able to gain knowledge just from uh, a psychological standpoint, in the sense of being able to have that social and emotional intelligence that you gather from just watching something like this. I think it helps people could learn how to talk better from a podcast,
Hmm.
interact better, how to love better, how to have more fun, gain knowledge that you didn't have. So I think it's great, you know.
What role do you see brand playing in a business's evolution, growth, scale?
Yeah, I'd say brand is the identity of a business, right? Like the business is the like actions behind like all of like the gears and moving parts of it, but like the brand is kind of like the outer shell of it in the way it gets presented. So if the brand's really bad, right? If the branding is bad, then it could have a great business behind it that's inside of it. But if the branding of it's bad, like you might not find the appeal to want to learn more or be a part of that. So I think they have to work hand in hand. And I think we've seen in these generations now where people focus a lot more on the brand instead of the business. So you're able to create this magical like fairy tale story, but behind closed doors there's really nothing to that. the personal approach I've taken with my work is the product will sell itself. As far as marketing, branding, and etc. goes, I've actually taken the shift of having great product and great services first, and then figuring out brand marketing and etc. Because they're going to sell themselves anyways. But I feel like, especially in the fashion field, you get a lot of people that it's just copy and paste brands and styles and designs, and to the core of it, there's really nothing there. It's just another thing, right? But I think if you could focus on the product and what's really the essence of like what I'm trying to do, I think those things make it a lot easier to market that and to sell that and to have a brand identity with that that could grow over time.
What are some elements of high quality production in your view, and how can that impact brand?
I think a lot of it could just be being unapologetically and in a raw form being yourself, right? Like I think those things could fuel those, because again, if you're putting on a facade or like a smoke and mirror, and that's again why podcasting is great, because you get to sit down with people for hours at a time and watch hundreds to thousands of episodes of somebody. You start to learn who they are, and that's why I think that that's kind of taking over news and etc., because that's just it's scripted. It's you're on for 45 minutes, you're going to talk about these topics, and it's going to be very direct, and there's really not much room for adding human elements. But I think to be yourself and to really to like show, because then people could identify and relate to those things. When everything's smoke and mirrors, it's hard to identify. Now it's good to strive towards things, but if you don't have at the core you being yourself and expressing yourself in the manner in any business, um, I think it's a struggle for people to connect to. And what's it worth to have something that's people can't connect to, you know?
Mm. The partners, the customers, those that work with One Team Media, obstacles, adversities, questions that they're looking for answers to, that you've seen has been a resounding theme. Our listeners might resonate with some of the problems that they want solved or the concerns that they have. What would you say the common theme is from a customer standpoint of, yeah, we choose Team Media because?
Yeah, I think what we do really well at is, I think when people look, especially older school businesses or people that maybe haven't grown up with this being as prominent, like I'm 30, so I've seen a little bit of very basic technology to as advanced as we are today. So it's relatively normal for me to like understand why podcasting makes sense. What is an Instagram algorithm? Why does that make sense? Why are we so drawn to our phones? Those things make sense to me just because I've grown up around it and I've seen the growth of going from the iPod Shuffle that was just a USB stick to now an iPhone. And you weren't on your iPod Shuffle for 8 hours a day, but you look at your screen time on your phone currently and it's 8 hours. So I think that whenever you have some of these people coming in here, I think what we do is we provide a platform for them to really be able to like understand that this is not. I think people are intimidated by when you talk podcasting or you talk about social media being integrated in your business. I think a lot of people go, oh, well, we've done it a certain way for a really long time. We don't need that, or I can't do that. It doesn't make sense for me to be a part of that. When in reality, I think that we're able to, sit them behind a desk and be like, hey, just start talking. And they're like, well, what? Is that what a podcast is? It literally is. It's just having a conversation. Forget the cameras are here, making people feel comfortable and being able to deliver what they actually want to, put out into the world. And I think that this, like, we're not blowing smoke, up anybody's ass as far as like, saying like, hey, you show up here, you do an episode, you're going to be rich. It's being like, hey, this is again where you got to put your attention to this. You got to, put your care, time, and effort into, getting your message out there, sharing to the people with what you've done in the business and why should you choose this business over another. And it's just, being able to strip down all of the maybe scary feats of like what it takes to do a podcast. You hear about people all the time. Oh, I don't have time for that, or I can't do that. Well, we really just break it down to like it's just recording. It's just social media. You just post. You just talk about what you think is best, and it gives people the opportunity and the comfort to go, oh, I could do this. I don't have to be Joe Rogan. And when you look at Joe Rogan, he was also just a guy that just jumped in front of a camera and started talking. It wasn't a Spotify production right out the gate. It was him in his basement with his buddies just talking because they just wanted to have fun. And that was what their attention was focused around. Now it shifted into like knowledge and more of like things that, Joe, for an example, is like what he's interested in. And it just so happens that millions and millions of people across the world are also interested in those things. But if you go work with another company that maybe doesn't give you the proper attention or doesn't make you feel comfortable, you might never get into that, and you might just kind of fizzle into insignificance, or the business, you sell it, you're done with it. But this could bring a new life to it. But this is just given that platform.
Why are companies, large brands, getting behind podcasters, investing in the social landscape?
Yeah, just because from a business perspective in a raw form, it's just where things are going. There's no doubt that, like, I couldn't even tell you the last time I seen a newspaper, right? I couldn't tell you the last time I got information from the TV and news. All of my information comes from the internet, uh, podcasting, and not to say that's the end all be all. Like, you still have to, like, do apply some old school tactics, but if you find the right people, the way I kind of look at it, would I rather sit down for the next month and try to read 50 to 100 books, or could I have somebody that's been reading those books, analyze them, studying those, having conversations with people, and then giving me a condensed version, a concentrated version in a 3 hour, podcast about a certain topic, that, it's able to streamline information in a way that we've never been able to get before. Before, you'd have to go to a library, you'd have to go talk to the one person in the town that knew what the hell was going on. But now it's instantaneous. Like, we have the world at our fingertips, and I think people are investing into those things because it has all the attention and eyes. And then there's also, like, it's very addictive, um it's very satisfying, it makes you feel good. So it's a double-edged sword. Like, you could sit there and go, I learned this information, I'm good, like that's all I needed, and then you just move on. Then you get more information. It's like we have an information overload, when there was probably a time where you could just be like, I just want to focus on this. Like, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a psychologist. I want to be, a construction worker. But there is a bit of overstimulate, not a bit, a ton of overstimulation that we get. But for business, like, to look at some of the bigger corporations, like, that's amazing for them. It's like a cash cow, knowing that you're going to have millions of eyes. You could sell this product, and also the way things are done creatively too. Just like a side note, um, ads suck most of the time, right? Like, nobody likes to be advertised towards, but I think one of the smartest and most genius marketing that I've seen in the past couple years is when you go on, like, when you watch a comedy podcast, there will be BetterHelp, for example, right? They're getting ad reads from these comedians, and they're riffing, they're adding their skit to it. I'm listening to an ad now because I want to hear what that person has to interpret and say about it, and it makes you laugh. And for those 45 extra seconds, I actually listen to this BetterHelp thing, which might, over time, increase. It does increase my chances to use that product over somebody else's, but they don't have to invest the marketing dollars to get this whole plan of this team that's going to film this thing. Just give it to these comedians, and they're going to riff on it, and it's going to be funny. And if 5 people sign up because of
Hmm.
that, they did their job. So I think it's just new age and new era of marketing, and it's so unique, and it's still untapped. I believe. I think it's going to continue to grow and get even more unique and different. And there's reasons why people, like, you could pay to skip ads, but again, some of the ads are a part of the show. It makes the show what it is, because they're still being themselves within those ads. It's all new.
Our listeners want to connect with you, Jesse Woods, One T Media. How do they do it?
You talking through, like, social media and stuff? Yeah. Bless you.
Thank you.
So my social media handle is at Jesse Woods underscore archives. Um, Also, I have another page, is Jesse Woods underscore collection. The archives page is the one that I currently am more active on. Also, you could find me through the One Team Media website, um, in which, if you're working with One Team Media, you'll be able to get some of this creative insight on the projects. It's been exciting to just be a part of. My sport in life is creativity, so I love that I'm able to work on art creation, shoes, whatever. But it's also a lot more fun to sit down with a client that's like, hey, I'm looking to, I do roofing. How can I in a fun way engage with clients? And for those creative problem solvings to like sit down and really think like, all right, how do we do this differently? That's a part of, what we have here at One Team Media, along with the ability, the team of editing and production and the shooting and all of the operations. Like, there's it's a lot that goes into it. But yeah, social media and One Team Media.
If you're listening to this podcast, go follow my friend Jesse Woods. Wow, it's been
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
amazing.
Absolutely.
Jesse Woods.
Thank you.
I can't wait till next time. Please share this with someone that needs to hear it. Leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast. We will see you next time.